There's a very strange financial moment that I've seen repeat itself in a lot of people's lives. It's the moment when they look at their bank account and realize the amount of money they have is much larger than it was just a few years ago. But instead of feeling more relaxed, they actually start feeling more pressure. I've heard people say things like, "Back when I was broke, life felt simpler. Now that I finally have some money, I'm scared of losing it." Or, "The more I accumulate, the heavier every financial decision starts to feel." What's interesting is that most people assume that as their wealth grows, their mind will feel lighter. But in reality, I've noticed the opposite. Once you pass a certain financial threshold, the money game is no longer about how much more you can earn. It becomes about how well you operate the money you already have. And this is exactly where a lot of people get stuck. Not because they lack discipline, not because they don't earn enough, but because they're still using the same old way of thinking to manage a completely different level of money. After years of observing how people build wealth, I've realized something. The journey of accumulating money rarely fails because of big mistakes. It usually fails because of very small psychological habits, repeated over many years. In this video, I want to share a few things I've noticed about how people actually build wealth. Not flashy advice, just very ordinary observations about why money grows or why it stays stuck. And we'll start with something that most people never really notice. Main point 1. The way you think about money needs to change. As the amount of money changes, I've noticed something pretty interesting. A lot of people are actually very good during the early stage of their financial journey. They know how to save money, avoid debt, track their spending, and stay disciplined. Those habits help them move from having almost nothing to finally building a meaningful amount of savings. But after that, something strange happens. They keep exactly the same mindset. They still treat every financial decision as a small expense problem. Today's meal, a discounted item, a bill that needs to be reduced. And there's nothing wrong with that. But once your assets become larger, that mindset is no longer the main lever. I once met someone who was extremely disciplined with money. He compared prices before buying anything. He was proud of saving a few dollars every time he shopped. But when I looked at his overall financial picture, I noticed something. He spent a lot of energy optimizing tiny expenses, but almost no time thinking about bigger financial decisions. For example, is his current job helping him grow his income long term? How is his investment money actually allocated? Or whether the cash sitting in his accounts is being used efficiently? Most people don't realize that when your money is still small, every little saving can make a noticeable difference. But once the numbers get bigger, the things that really move the needle are no longer those small decisions. They are structural decisions. Where you work, what you invest in, whether your money is sitting still or actually working. And what's interesting is that many people never truly make that shift. They keep a defensive mindset toward money. And because of that, their wealth grows very slowly, even though their income is much higher than before. One thing I've realized is that one of the most important transitions in a financial journey is not earning more money. It's starting to think about money at a bigger level, not one bill at a time, but your entire financial system. Main point 2. Money only starts to accelerate when you stop controlling it every single day. After years of observing how people manage their finances, I noticed something a bit paradoxical. The more people try to control every dollar, every single day, the harder it becomes for their money to grow. That sounds counterintuitive because for most of our lives, we're taught that good money management means tracking everything closely. And in the early stages of your financial life, that's actually very important. You need to know what you're spending. You need to know where your money is going. But at a certain point, if you keep trying to manage money decision by decision, you will always feel mentally exhausted by it. I've seen people do the same routine every month. They open a spreadsheet. They review every expense. They promise themselves they'll do better next month. But interestingly enough, the same pattern repeats again and again, not because they lack discipline, but because they're trying to manage money using willpower instead of systems. What most people don't realize is that willpower is a very limited resource. After a long day of work, after dealing with stress and responsibilities, your brain simply doesn't want to make more difficult decisions. And that's usually when the worst financial decisions appear. An expensive dinner, an impulse purchase, a cost that wasn't really necessary. None of these destroy your finances immediately. But when they repeat over many years, they quietly slow down the growth of your money. What's interesting is that people who build lasting wealth usually don't spend much time thinking about money every day. Instead, they do something very simple. They build an automatic money system. Money comes into the account. One portion goes straight into savings. One portion goes into investments. And only the remaining amount becomes spending money. Once that system is in place, a lot of small decisions disappear. You no longer have to ask yourself every month, should I save money this month? Because that decision has already been made in advance. One thing I've realized is that many people think building wealth has to feel stressful. But in reality, the people who go the furthest financially often share one trait. They reduce the number of financial decisions they need to make. And once money starts moving through a system, their minds feel much lighter too. Main point 3. Higher income doesn't make you richer if your lifestyle rises even faster. After years of observing how people change when their income goes up, I noticed something really interesting. Most people don't actually realize the exact moment their life starts becoming more expensive. Not because they're suddenly overspending, but because the changes happen very slowly. At first, it's just a small decision, something like, my job is more stressful now, so eating out once in a while feels reasonable. Then another change comes along. I've been working really hard. Taking a vacation once a year feels well-deserved. And after a few years, things that once felt like luxuries quietly become normal parts of life. What's interesting is that during this whole process, most people still feel like they're being perfectly reasonable. They don't feel like they're wasting money. They're just living at the level their income allows. But there's something many people don't notice. Once your lifestyle goes up, it almost never comfortably goes back down. You might switch to a cheaper phone. You might skip a trip. But the feeling of downgrading your life almost always feels uncomfortable. Because of that, living costs tend to move in only one direction. I once spoke with someone whose income had tripled since the start of their career. But when I asked if they felt financially freer, their answer was surprising. Honestly, not that much. And this isn't unusual. Because when income rises, these things usually rise with it. Housing, cars, vacations, food habits, and even social spending. What most people don't realize is this. The biggest shift in personal finance doesn't happen when you earn more money. It happens when the gap between income and spending is preserved. That gap is where wealth is built. If that gap stays consistent over many years, your assets have room to grow. But if your spending rises every time your income rises, life simply becomes more expensive, not truly wealthier. Interestingly, people who build lasting wealth usually don't try to live a harsh or deprived life. They still upgrade their lifestyle over time. But they do one very simple thing. They upgrade slower than their income grows. And if that small gap stays in place for many years, wealth begins to grow in ways most people never expect. Main point 4. The biggest financial mistakes usually come from emotions, not knowledge. After years of observing people's financial behavior, I realized something a bit surprising. Most of the worst money decisions don't happen because people lack knowledge. They happen because emotions step in too strongly. What's interesting is that when people talk about money, they love focusing on knowledge. What to invest in, what interest rate is best, which asset performs better. And yes, those things matter. But in reality, Knowledge is rarely the biggest problem because most people already know the basic principles. They know they should save money. They know they should invest long term. They know they shouldn't carry too much debt. The real problem is this. When emotions show up, those principles can disappear in just a few minutes. I've seen this happen many times. Someone invests in a disciplined way for years, but when the market drops sharply, they start feeling anxious, not because they don't understand the market, but because seeing the numbers in their account fall makes it feel like a piece of their effort is disappearing. And in that emotional state, our brain usually wants to do one thing: make the discomfort stop immediately. So many people sell their investments at the worst possible moment. A few months later, the market recovers. But by then, they're already on the sidelines. What's interesting is that this doesn't only happen with investing, it also happens with spending. After a stressful week at work, many people reward themselves with a big purchase, not because they truly need the item, but because they want to feel better. Decisions like these don't destroy finances overnight, but when they repeat for many years, they quietly create very large money leaks. What most people don't realize is this: managing money effectively is not a competition of intelligence. It's a competition of emotional control over long periods of time. The people who build stable wealth are rarely the ones who know the most. They're simply the ones who react less emotionally to money. They don't get overly excited when their money goes up, and they don't panic when it goes down. They see money as a long-term process, not a short series of wins and losses. I've realized that once you learn how to separate emotions from financial decisions, a lot of very expensive mistakes simply stop happening. Main point 5. Large wealth usually comes from very unexciting decisions. After years of observing how people accumulate money, I noticed something interesting. The financial decisions that truly create big differences are usually very boring. They're not dramatic, they're not exciting, and they almost never become headlines. Meanwhile, the stories we usually hear about money are the complete opposite. Investments that skyrocket, opportunities to get rich quickly, people whose lives change overnight after one decision. Those stories make many people believe that in order to build wealth, you constantly need big moves. But when I observe people who actually build stable wealth over many years, I notice they rarely operate like that. They do very ordinary things. They keep working. They keep saving a portion of their income. They keep investing consistently. None of these decisions look extraordinary, but when those actions repeat over 10 or 20 years, the results start looking very different. What's interesting is that the human brain doesn't like this kind of progress. We like fast change. We like the feeling that we're doing something big. So when wealth grows slowly for a long time, many people start feeling like they're doing something wrong. They want to try something new. A different investment, a different strategy, a new opportunity that sounds more exciting. And sometimes those changes end up breaking the wealth-building process that took years to create. What most people don't realize is this: in personal finance, stability often matters more than brilliance. A reasonable strategy maintained for a long time usually produces much better results than a perfect strategy that constantly changes. I've realized that people who go very far financially often share one simple trait. They're not looking for excitement from money. They're simply patient enough to let money work over time. And when they look back years later, those ordinary decisions turn out to be exactly what built their wealth. After observing the financial behavior of many people, I've realized that the journey of building wealth rarely fails because of massive mistakes. It usually fails because of small things. A mindset that doesn't evolve as money grows, a lack of systems for managing money lifestyle rising too quickly, with income financial decisions driven by emotion and impatience with long-term strategies. When you look closely, money isn't really a complicated mystery. It's simply a combination of behavior, habits, and time. And what's interesting is that once you start understanding how psychology affects money, you begin to see that many common mistakes are completely avoidable. If you found these insights helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel continue creating deeper content about money psychology and wealth-building behavior. Thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you in the next video.